We usually think of a database as just a place to, well, store data. But what if it could be way more than that? Today, we're going to unlock its hidden power and turn that passive container into an active, intelligent partner in your application. So let me ask you a question. Right now, is your database just a digital storage closet? A place where you dump information and then have to do all the heavy lifting yourself? What if I told you it has the potential to actively work for you? Enforcing rules, simplifying complex tasks, and seriously boosting performance. All right, in this explainer, we're opening up what I like to call the Programmable Database Toolbox. First up, we're grabbing views to help us simplify complexity. Then we'll dive into procedures to centralize our business logic. After that, we'll unleash the real power of triggers, the automatic guardians of your data. And to wrap it all up, we'll figure out how to choose the right tool for the right job. Okay, first tool out of the box, views. Look, if you've ever found yourself wrestling with these monstrously long, complicated queries, this is absolutely the tool you've been waiting for. So what exactly is a view? The simplest way to think about it is as a saved query that you can interact with just like a regular table. It's a virtual table, and that's key. It doesn't actually store any data itself. It just acts as a window, showing you the result of a query you already defined. So why do we even need them? Well, it usually comes down to two big problems. First, real-world queries can get incredibly messy, with tons of joins, and it is a huge pain to write and debug those over and over again. And second, just giving every user and every application direct access to your core tables, that's a massive security risk waiting to happen. And this is where views are just brilliant. They solve both problems at once. You can take that messy multi-table join and wrap it up in a single, clean view. Now anyone can get that data with a simple select all from your new view. And for security, you can create a view that only shows certain columns or rows, hiding sensitive info like, say, employee salaries, from anyone who has no business seeing it. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Some views are actually updatable. But to keep things from getting chaotic, you can use this little clause called with check option. It's a clever feature that basically ensures any changes you make through the view don't end up violating the rules of the view. It's a really powerful way to enforce consistency. All right, let's grab our second tool, stored procedures. If views are all about simplifying how we read data, procedures are all about centralizing how we act on it. And this is all about efficiency. A stored procedure is essentially a mini program that lives right inside your database. It's a named bundle of SQL statements that can take inputs, give back outputs, and even use logic like if-else statements. Once you create it, it's compiled and stored, ready to be called by its name anytime you need it. So what problem are we trying to solve here? Well, imagine your core business logic, like, say, registering a new user, is spread out across a bunch of different applications. Each app has to talk to the database multiple times just to get one thing done. This creates this really chatty, inefficient, and super slow back and forth between your app and your database. Let's stick with that user registration example. Without a procedure, your app first sends a query to create the user record. Then it sends another query to create their profile. And finally, it sends a third query to log the whole event. That's 3 separate round trips across the network. And each one of those has overhead, it has latency, and it's another potential point of failure. It's just not efficient at all. But with a stored procedure, the whole game changes. The application makes just one single call to the database. That one procedure then runs all 3 steps right there on the server. The difference in performance can be absolutely dramatic. So what's the big takeaway here? Well, you get a huge performance boost because you're slashing network traffic. Your logic becomes super reusable and consistent because all the business rules live in one central spot. And, as a nice little bonus, the database actually caches the execution plan, which makes every call after the first one even faster. Okay, on to our final tool, and let me tell you, this one is powerful. Triggers. The best way to think of a trigger is as an automatic guardian, constantly standing watch over your data. See, a trigger is this unique kind of procedure because you never ever call it directly. Instead, it just automatically fires whenever a specific event happens, like an insert, an update, or a delete on a table that it's watching. So how does that even work? Well, inside the triggers code, you get special access to the data that's being changed. There's a new alias that holds the incoming data for your inserts and updates, and there's an old alias that holds the data being replaced or deleted. This is the secret sauce that makes them so powerful. So what can you do with this power? Well, the two biggest use cases are auditing and enforcing really complex business rules. For auditing, you could set up a trigger that automatically logs every single salary change into a separate audit table, no questions asked. Or, for business rules, you could use one to prevent a department from being deleted if it still has employees, a rule that's way too complex for a standard check constraint. But, and this is a big but, here's a critical warning. Because triggers fire automatically and, invisibly, they can make debugging an absolute nightmare. When something in your application breaks, it's not always obvious that some hidden trigger is the one causing the problem. So please use them with care.
Okay, we've filled our toolbox. We've got views, procedures, and triggers. Now for the most important part, knowing which one of these tools to use and when.
Let's break it down real simple. Use a view when you want to simplify complex queries and lock down security. You just query it like any other table. Use a stored procedure when you want to bundle up business logic and boost performance. You call it directly by its name. And finally, you use a trigger to automatically react to data changes for things like auditing and complex rules. It just fires all on its own. So we have seen the incredible power you get by putting logic directly into the database. But this leaves us with a really critical question to think about. Where do you draw the line? At what point does this powerful asset become a liability that's hard to test, hard to version, and hard to maintain? Now that's the real challenge for every developer and architect out there. Thanks for joining me.